What is up? This is Nathan. I am here, a Backyardigans, ready to give you guys the new stats on what we're dealing with here with the Backyardigans. I'm just checking we don't have new stats because it stopped airing. I think it's still technically airing a couple episodes every once in a while, but the actual production kind of ended back in 2010, I believe. And now I just get to enjoy the beauty that has already been created within these 4 seasons. Part of me is pretty happy that they stopped at season 4. Don't get mad at me yet. I say that because it's whole and complete in what it is, and now I feel like the entertainment value, even the moral value of a lot of shows have just kind of gone down. And Backyardigans just holds true as just like a classic, next to things like Lord of the Rings and Indiana Jones and whatever else, which I haven't seen too much Indiana Jones. But speaking of which, today we're actually going to talk about Backyardigans from the perspective of its creator. Backyardigans has a creator, Janice Burgess, who is one of the more respectable people for me within the entertainment industry in general. She has an amazing story. I'm only beginning to understand everything that she's done in her life, and as a director, as a producer, as everything that she does, especially for Nick Jr. She's just phenomenal. I said it wrong last time. I'm going to say it right this time. So I really appreciate her for it. Yeah, we're just going to go in a little bit, look a little bit at the history of Backyardigans, how it's kind of formed, and really see why Backyardigans is what it is, based off of the perspective, the drive of Janice Burgess. All right, so back in the 1990s, Janice Burgess kind of started getting involved in Nick Jr. In production and everything. I don't remember what her exact titles were. But she started to formulate this idea of the Backyardigans. They actually, before this began to be produced, the animated show in 2004, there was actually live action pilots that took place, which aren't fully accessible on the internet, unfortunately. But Janice Burgess, before the Backyardigans, was involved in the production of Little Bill and Blue's Clues. Later became, I believe, the vice president of Nick Jr. and really held a position within the world of kids entertainment. But at some point, she wanted to start her own show, and it was very daunting. I've got to read and listen to multiple interviews she'd had and speeches into formulating this show. So from what I've gathered and picked up on, I like to kind of just give my perspective on her perspective. And she's a big adventure buff. That's where we bring Indiana Jones into, because Indiana Jones, Star Wars, a lot of these adventure movies, that's her thing. That's what she loves to wrap herself around. She loves to jump into the thrill of it all. And I forget the exact way she put it, but she loves big, stupid adventure movies. Just that you can get wrapped into these sci-fi adventures, and you can enjoy it. It'll take you to a different world, and a lot of times we all need that. So she really appreciated those kind of movies and shows and series. Man, this still is not balanced. Well, I need to do it better myself. But she loves all of these adventure movies and all these adventure series, and that's what allowed her to kind of have the focus into building the Backyardigans, because we know this 4-season series kind of builds around adventures, right? Every single episode they go into a different adventure, different place, and go on crazy things. And if you've watched the Backyardigans enough, you know that there's some pretty risky stuff put in there, both from a director's perspective and also just from what the characters themselves have to go through. Like, I was recently watching Scared of You, where Austin was having to go and give letters to these 3, I guess, friends of the mad scientists. They were scared of him. That's why the episode's called Scared of You. But throughout that time, he had to go through a lot of dangerous things. Like when he was at the mummy's place, he saw a sign that said "Don't step on the X," and literally the whole floor of that room were X's. So he was running around trying not to get destroyed by it. That kind of makes me think of Indiana Jones. But that points to just the danger and the risk behind the series. For the fact that Janice Burgess puts that in there for what is known to be geared towards a preschool audience, it's kind of it's kind of thrown some parents off guard because they look at preschool counting colors. But here, this isn't just about even specifically education. This is about adventure and excitement. And Janice Burgess said that herself. She wanted to create a show where kids could just be kids, where they could watch something and not just be informed. And I believe through this is one of the more educational series for the fact that kids learn life experiences and not just facts, statistics, math equations, and all of those things. So I'm kind of going all around here, but I just really love Janice Burgess' heart behind creating the show and what she was able to build on it. I want to go to an interview. People asked her, I think they interviewed her when she was in Pennsylvania, but I know it has a lot to do with Pittsburgh and where she grew up as a kid. They asked her kind of her inspiration, and besides everything I just said, she grew up in not in her backyard. She grew up in a house, but had a backyard, and a lot of her adventures, a lot of her fun took place in the neighborhood. I think it was Squirrel Hill North in Pittsburgh. Never been there, but I looked it up on Google Maps. Looks like a great spot, and she really formulated the Backyardigans based off of her neighborhood in Pittsburgh. And people ask her, is any of these adventures really located in Pittsburgh? And she says, to an extent, all of them are, because she feels that all of these adventures kind of were created out of her childhood and where she grew up in Pittsburgh. So it's kind of cool to think about just building these imaginary adventures. As a child, I think that there's something potent about that we should not lose as we get older. Another thing that they talked about is the characters. And they asked Janice, what do you relate to most for the characters? And she said, really, I relate to all of them. A little bit of all of them represent, who I am. And I really appreciate that, and I can see that. Like I said last video, there's a little bit of Tasha in all of us. And I think some of us are definitely more extreme than others. And just hearing Janice talk, I feel like there are a lot of these characters within her. And I think it really... those 5 characters put together puts a balance that specifically for her personality, I would say some of us have at least a tiny bit of everything inside of us, even though it might never ever come out in our life. Being shy, being super excited, being a little bossy, and having attitude, being somewhat chill and being a leader, and then being enthusiastic. I think that and charismatic. I think all of those are in us to an extent, and I think all of those things should come out in a healthy manner all the time. They also asked Janice, I believe it was in this interview, about Uniqua, and it was like, okay, what's the deal with Uniqua? What's going on? That's one of the most Googled searches when it comes to the Backyardigan is who is Uniqua? What is she? What species? People say she's an ant, she's a ladybug, she's an alien, and I love the creation of Uniqua. I think it's something important that we need to look to. According to the creator of the Backyardigans, Janice Burgess, this Uniqua is her name and her species. Sorry to bob your head, I didn't mean to. Is her name and her species. And this kind of boggles people's mind. This is really honestly what Janice leaves it at. And some people can't handle that. They're like, nah, never mind. Forget what the creator said. She's probably a ladybug or something, or an alien. But this idea that she is a Uniqua, both as a name and as a species, it's still something I'm trying to wrap my mind around. There's a video on YouTube I saw a few weeks ago about what a Uniqua is, and I kind of gave my perspective. There's a lot of different things to think about when you talk about Uniqua, what Uniqua is. I don't want to go into that too much, but I think there's a lot to discover there, both from the creator's intent, but I think also just what we can see as it is. As I've said before in a previous video, is I think there's a lot of things in the Backyardigans that is so deep and so much to explore, even if even if Janice Burgess didn't even intend for that to be understood in a certain way. And And so there's still a lot to explore when it comes to Uniqua, when it comes to all of these characters and to what Janice Burgess was trying to create. But when you look at these different episodes, you can see the adventure behind it. Tale of the Mighty Knights is it's so cool. The egg, it starts with an egg and goes ballistic from there. You look at Cave Party, that's a great episode. Somewhat chill, a lot of great music. Skate Ahead is a really cool song, but at the same time, there's two people, cave people, that are trying to meet together so that they can howl at the moon. And you have Mission to Mars. They go to Mission to Mars and they go meet the Mommy Martian, voiced by Alicia Keys, and they realize the sound that they were hearing back on Earth was a Martian, that there is life on Mars, which I don't know if it's an exact reflection of our real world today, but it is something to think about for our real world. But more than that, looking into the depth of the episode itself, you see the adventures they go on and things that they know and understand. And so I think when you talk about the value behind everything, when you talk about you talk about the morals you learn, you talk about the life experience, to an extent you get a witness in that. It's just so real and so raw, and I think this is potentially, well, I've said it before, I personally think it's the greatest TV show of all times, but when you even talk about education and teaching morals to kids, I think that this show is so important and so key. Some parents have complained about some of the extreme even language. They don't use too much language. You can go do that into a different episode. Or the extreme experiences that happen. And they can be a little intense for some people, but I think it's really important to allow kids to be exposed to those things, because we as we get older know that life isn't just about counting numbers on a wall, and it's not just about rolling around on the floor, although I think that is a lot of fun. And I think that if you haven't rolled on a floor recently, that you should seriously consider it. But the life is more to that. It's about finding friends at different places. It's about being prepared for the surprises and the shocks that you go through. It's about going on those adventures, whatever they look like, whether that be moving, whether that be doing all of these things, traveling, going to school and meeting new people. It's all an adventure, and I think Janice Burgess really pulls that perspective out of people. It's pulled that out of me for sure, in creating the Backyardigans. So we look where she started in the 1990s, being a part of a production team, to creating her own show, as the series progressed, really creating more fascinating content, more parody episodes, which is something else that I'd love to go into. I'll just say this: The Masked Retriever, based off of Zorro, it gets me. I need to rewatch that. That's another episode I need to rewatch. Janice Burgess is just so creative. She is an amazing team that she has had behind her, and they just go for it. She talked about being a part of the staff, or whatever, the production team, how they laugh, they talk, they brainstorm, they're a family together, and just hearing how family oriented the production team is. It really shows in the episodes. So that's just a little bit about Janice Burgess as a creator, what was behind. I don't know if I said things too fast. It's something I'm passionate about, so I'm probably going to rant and go a little bit everywhere. But it's super inspiring to be able to see such a magnificent TV show come and be produced and be accessible to someone like me, to be able to witness that. And so from watching these episodes and from seeing the sense of humor and from seeing all these things, even though there's a lot of different cool directors, which I could go into a different time, Janice Burgess also directly directed some episodes herself and oversaw all of it. And it really allows me to be able to know her as an individual more. I would love to sit down with her, interview her, talk about more of her intentions behind this. But I very much respect her, and I definitely want to be like her, when I get older, that I would be creative and adventurous in everything that I do. So I hope you guys got some good stuff out of this. Again, please leave comments about thoughts, questions, things you're confused about, disagreed about, recommendations on what we can talk about further. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more perspective about why the Backyardigans is what it is. The creator of the Backyardigans, I can't speak enough of how amazing she is. So this is Nathan. signing off. You guys have a great life.